Hello, I'm Craig Constantine. Welcome. This is the Podcaster Community Show, short conversations that are not just about podcasting, because I like to take the scenic route. Our guest today is Andrea Wojnicki, depending on how you want to pronounce it. Welcome, Andrea.
Thank you, Craig. It is such a pleasure to be here.
Let's have a pleasure ping pong match. Oh, it's my pleasure. No, it's your pleasure. It's like that thing about
No,
stop
really.
saying thank you, Craig. No, really. No, you go first. My father used to make a joke. Oh, I don't think I've ever said this on a podcast. My father used to make a joke that he was a one I got it guy. You might, what? So you go to dinner with my dad. I mean, not the kids, but somebody else. And the check would come. My father would always grab his wallet, reach for the check, and he'd go, I got it. And he meant it. If he got his hands on it, he paid. But if you went, no, I got it, he was like, okay, put his wallet away. It was a one,
Nice.
I got it guy.
I love
Never
it.
paid
I
for
love
dinner
it.
because people are always like, oh, I got it. He'd be like, all right, you got it.
And you can always say, I offered first.
Yes, I offered first, and he meant it. I had, he would pay. But yeah, so that I mean, people listening are like, what are we? But communication, right? So communication for me is straight up a tool. It's super important. And I really think the hardest thing for me to learn was that in order to communicate well, I had to not be on broadcast. It's like a CB. You got to let go of let off the mic and let the other person talk. And I'm wondering, the people that you coach, I'm guessing, are more experienced or more like they're already in situ. They're already like in some role and they want to improve their communication. And Andrea's nodding along,
Yes,
patiently waiting
I
for me to
am.
let go of the mic, go with the key. What do you think are the biggest challenge? Is the biggest challenge for them, and how does that compare, say, to somebody who's starting out in podcasting? Two very different circles on the Venn diagram.
Wow. Okay.
Let's
So
start with an easy question.
I was thinking about this recently, actually, about how my clients who come to me, there's definitely a significant self-selection bias. These people have a growth mindset and they are clearly ambitious.
Mm-hmm.
And they know that they are probably done with the majority of their, if not all of their formal quote unquote education in terms of going to university or college. But they also look around and they're like, I got more in me. And so they're focused on self-improvement and quote unquote soft skills, of which a large part is communication. And very often they're looking around at who's the A plus around them and what is different about them. And very often it is communication skills, right? So they are coming to me with this ambition and this desire to improve and focus on improving their communication skills. And I say to them, like, no matter whether it's confidence or storytelling or a specific presentation that they want help with, that we can work on a combination of mindsets and frameworks or tactics. So, and I was thinking about the frameworks or tactic thing with reference to your dad's rule about always offering to pay the bill first. This is actually a great example of something where he doesn't have to think about it anymore, right? It makes him the generous guy. He gets on with his day and he has this rule. So I'm really encouraging those kind of frameworks or tactics with my clients. That's a new one though. I'll get the bill and then, no, okay, you can take it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the ambitious executive that I'm coaching. And then you're saying, how does that, or you're asking,
Yeah. What's
how
the
does that
comparison?
person compare? So I actually
Think about somebody you saw in we met through the podcasting workshop. A lot of people on the show come from there. So think about the people that you see where you're like, oh, I have skills, but I'm busy learning, but I have skills that would help you. But they're coming from a very different place. I mean, even if they can be senior management, but as a podcaster, somehow they put on the podcast hat and it's antimatter for they feel like, oh, I have no experience. Like for some reason, presenting the podcast erases all of their not self-esteem, all their, don't help me out.
Self-reflection, self-awareness.
Whatever. Yeah. I was going to say, like, I have a certain level of, I believe that I can do this. Whatever you're talking about. And somehow they like, I can do this. And then when you say podcasting, they go, oh, I can't do this.
That's interesting.
It's
right?
like imposter syndrome.
Yeah. We can go into confidence and imposter syndrome. I love this question. It's a question that I haven't been asked before. So I try not to say that's a great question. And by the way, that's one of my pet peeves when I'm interviewing someone or I'm listening to an interview is hearing people say that's a great question. It's like, okay, can we get on with answering it, please? So I try to save it for when I mean it, and I mean it. It is a great question because you're
You're
making me
my
think.
evil, you're my evil twin sister separated at birth. Because I have the same train of thought, except having practiced compassion, learning it recently. I now know why people say that. It's like a defense mechanism because they were
Mm,
expecting I like lull or lure people in with this coffee table, kitchen counter kind of conversational feng shui thing that I do. And then I'd be like, yes. And, where were you last Tuesday at 3 p.m.? And suddenly they freeze. Well, that's a good question.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I think I understand why, but
It's
I keep
almost a
derailing you.
it's almost a crutch word, right?
Yes.
Also it's so, but they're also being friendly and they're signaling that they're a positive, it's a positive interaction, a positive relationship. So I understand it comes from a positive intention. But to answer your question, the podcasters that I've met are more of a diverse group, right? They typically
Mm,
have a passion or an expertise about something that is really an inner drive, but it could be anything. It's not, it's not business, which is most of my clients are business executives. So it is some sort of business. It's some sort of topic that they're an expert in that they want to share, even if it's fiction that they're podcasting, right? So
hmm
it's some kind of inner drive. And then I have to say, particularly with the emerging podcasters, we'll call them, I put my marketing hat on because my degrees are all in marketing, and I'm thinking about their brand and I'm thinking about their target market and how they're promoting themselves.
hmm
And then I'm also thinking about their communication. So how they're like, are they, when they start every episode, are they saying, "Tell us about yourself, Andrea"? And I'm like, no, no, no. That's not why
Yeah.
people.
Oh, that's my. You want to? So this is the part where on video, Craig goes like this. Just making
Yeah,
sure I didn't wind up on my soapbox there unexpectedly.
that's
I
funny.
think that I almost don't want to say this while we're recording, but I'm going to say it. When I catch anybody say, "Tell me about yourself,"
Hmm.
or "Andrea, introduce yourself," I'm just like, "What, you podcaster?
Yeah,
Either do your job,
yeah.
which is best do that." And I've done a couple of these, not to this show. I've done like hundreds of other shows where I went through the experiment and realized the best way to do the introduction is to not do it. Do it in post and record it because people squirm. If I have somebody help me write a really good 3 sentence, "this person is better than sliced bread" intro, and I read that and say, "Welcome, Andrea," people are like, they're like afraid to speak. So I sometimes think the best intro is the one that you don't make the guest even sit through. Anyway,
So
yes,
true
but
confessions, Craig. My first few episodes where I had a guest, they were seated across the dining room table from me, and I read their bio while they were looking at me, and it was like, oh, awkward. And after I did that maybe 3 times, I said, I'm going to
stop it.
do a post production intro. And I mean, we could talk about introductions for the rest of this entire episode if you like, but I do that now where I call them bookends. So I have the introduction
Yep.
and the conclusion, which I record afterwards. And one of the key learnings that I have had, and I actually learned it before I started podcasting, and I can tell you a story about how a professor at Harvard Business School stood up and started yelling at me because I didn't do this. So that's when I really learned it. But if you, whenever you're giving a presentation, I know it sounds repetitive, but you tell them what you're going to tell them, you tell them, and then you tell them what you told them. And I'm like,
Churchill.
so, so 29-year-old me giving my first academic presentation, I'm like, no, that's boring. I want suspense. And meanwhile, the professor at the back of the room is screaming at me, Andrea, why are we here? Yeah. Yeah.
There is a lot to be said for making mistakes and like learning how things are supposed to be done. And then after you understand how to do it, then go, make your own imprint. But I don't want to like derail this entirely. There's an opportunity here, like a relatively rare opportunity to go way meta on conversation. And
Yep.
you went like really close there by talking about the first 3 episodes. I did this, and then I changed my behavior. And I love my personal shtick is discovery, reflection, and efficacy. Long story about three words. But for me, sorry, I have wristbands. If you'd like a wristband that say discovery, reflection, and efficacy on them. Efficacy is problematic because some people under certain ages go, F a what? But anyway,
Really? Okay.
I, I spend a lot of time thinking about how did that episode go? Why did that episode go differently? Or that really, like, the wheels fell off that bus. What happened? And then trying to figure out, can I make it better? And sometimes the answer is no, it's two human beings. So I'm kind of thinking we could, and let's not, we could talk all about how to do good communication, but maybe it'd be more fun to talk about like ways that you can definitely kick the wheels off the bus in a hurry in like an informal conversational setting. I'm not really thinking like dinner party, but these kinds of conversations that we're doing, like, how could you mess this up really quick?
Wow. Well, oh, okay. So can we just
I'm,
back up for a second? I
you
have
know,
to say one of the terms that you've just used, talk about evil twin, the term meta. I'm trying not to
mm,
use it because of Zuckerberg. Um,
yeah, no, we're taking it
yeah, yeah,
back. I'm just
yeah,
like, no, screw you.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Just
We
call
were using
call it
Meta
Facebook.
long before you were
Yeah,
born, bro.
yeah, yeah. So given what I do though, right? I talk about talk about talk about talk about talk. It's meta by definition, right? So here we are.
Oh yeah, what's the name of your show?
My show's called That's a good point. My show is called Talk About Talk, and it's on all
Hmm.
of the platforms. If it doesn't come up as it should come up if you Google Talk About Talk, but it's communication skills training is the subtitle. So
The subtitle.
mm,
And what's the domain name, the website for your training and because the podcast is also available. If you just go to the website, you can just click.
yeah, everything is at talkabouttalk.com. Thank you for asking. Everything's there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's my job. So Meta, ways to screw it up.
So I a couple times in the last month, twice in the past month, have hosted live Q&As, right?
Hmm.
Where people are asking me questions, it's being recorded and amplified. And it's a little bit nerve-wracking. I'm quite confident with what I do. I haven't had imposter syndrome for a while. I can't say that I never did. I certainly did. But, I kind of had to remind myself, you're going to be okay, Andrea. And the thing that really helps is having a growth mindset. And I coach my clients about this too. A growth mindset is a superpower. And
Hmm.
specifically, I encourage people in their minds to define a growth mindset as I know what I know and I'm keen to learn more. So you remind yourself of your expertise, right? So I'm a marketer, I'm a communication coach, I've done research on interpersonal communication and consumer behavior. I know that stuff. I can talk to anyone in the world about that stuff. It doesn't mean I'm not going to know more than them, but I can hold my own. And I'm keen to learn more. So if someone asks me a question that I can't answer, I'm not defensive, I'm not closed. I'm growing and I'm learning and I can however that comes out, right? It could be I'm not sure but I'll find out, or it could be here's what I think. What do you think about that? Or I need to think about that, right? Like so almost whatever you say, if you have a growth mindset, you're golden. And I coach this, by the way, to people that are junior, because sometimes, for example, if they get promoted to a position where they may feel unqualified and they go into a meeting and someone asks them a question and they're like, "Uh-oh." I said, "Growth mindset." You tell them, "I can tell you from my perspective of being whatever maybe their last role was, boom boom boom, here's what I'd say. But here's here's what I'm thinking, and I'm curious what everybody else in the room says." And nobody's going to fault you for that. So growth mindset is key in any conversation.
Hmm. I'm just gonna press stop. Sorry.
Mic
Have
drop, bam.
yeah. Yeah, go ahead, drop your mic. Have a nice
Yeah.
day.
So while you're thinking about that, Craig, I want to just add one other thing. And I haven't met too many podcasters out there that are arrogant, but I have listened, like, in the community that we're involved in, that there certainly are. some, but we don't really hang out with them. The beauty of the growth mindset is that it acts as like an equalizer in terms of like if there's a continuum from being nervous to being perfectly confident to being arrogant, having a growth mindset will keep you in that perfect equilibrium.
Mm,
Because if you have a growth mindset, you cannot be arrogant. Arrogant people are not learning, they're defending what they already know.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a quote that springs to mind. I'm not going to bother digging for it, but it has something to do with, I just used it in another episode. I'm not sure if it was this show though, about it had something to do with, in order to be a good listener, you need to have enough space in your own head to be okay with, I don't know. Like if you're not
Mm,
comfortable in your own space, then anything Andrea says, I don't know where to put it. It's like trying to, like, the storage unit is full. Like this has to go outside. No, you can't. I disagree. But if the storage unit is this infinitely sized thing and I have everything arranged and I'm like, oh, this is nice. I'm having my cup of tea. Oh, that's cool. Bring
yeah.
that in. I don't know what that is. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I like that.
I'm
I
slaughtering
like
the
that.
quote. The quote was way better than that, but it was an interesting idea that dovetails with what you're describing.
Yeah. The other thing, so that's kind of a mindset that I very commonly talk with my clients about. And then in terms of at a more tactical level, I think tracking the ratio of the amount that I'm talking versus the other person's talking can be really powerful. And one thing that helped me when
I'm
I
not
was,
laughing at you.
I
Sorry.
know, I know,
I
I know why
just,
you're
I,
laughing.
I, these are about 20 minutes long. I just did one this morning for another show. It's basically the same length. And one of the things that I do, I don't have a step written down for it, but I zoom out so the whole waveform fits on my screen when I'm all done. And I look at, I'm over here and the guest is over there. And then I sit there and go, yeah, Craig, why is there twice as much of you than there is of the guest in this
Yep.
episode?
So
Like I
you are
just
actually,
look at it.
yeah. So you're physically
Sorry.
tracking the ratio.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I mean, I
Uh,
just try to get a read on it. And
when I
I
was,
find, go ahead. You're the guest.
I just, no, you talk. No, you.
Okay. So
Uh,
every time I'm a one, I got a guy. I offered, you said, go ahead. So I find that every single time, I think these days I've found a mistake. Oh, too much talking, too many jokes, too much of this. I'm beginning to feel like, well, but in this case, in that particular one, I had a guest who wasn't super comfortable, and they seemed to get more comfortable the more I talk. So I'm like, all right, I'll just jump on the comical, bicycle clown wagon, and do the thing. Andrea's like, yes. So
bingo,
I think
bingo,
going
bingo.
back to that, like, learning mindset, you have to learn when the wrong thing is actually the right thing. And you can only do that by observing and being curious.
Yes, yes. But I was shaking my finger because bingo, you just said
Like you go, boy. I was getting
what the research actually proves. The academic research proves that the more you talk, the more you like me.
yes, yes.
And someone in the career services office at my undergraduate university, they were giving a whatever a lecture to us on how to get the job, and they said, "Here's a trick that you should just keep in the back of your mind. The less you talk in the interview, and the more you get the interviewer to talk, the more likely you are to get the job." And I was
Yep.
like, "Oh, that's a fun game to play." And
Mm-hmm.
I got the job. I got all the jobs that I applied for. And I was like, I had questions. I was listening so that I could ask them questions about what they were saying. And it's
Yeah,
such
well,
a
then there's
key
that
insight.
whole next layer of, it's like, what do I say? So if I say, "Oh my God, Andrew, that's the funniest thing you've ever said," yeah, all right, that's a little saccharine. But if I go, "Wait, that's proof," whatever, and I say something specific that indicates that you just made me think differently, and then I show you those cards by, like, look what you just did over here, and then yeah, suddenly we're playing tennis and the James Karst Infinite Game. They were playing to make the game last longer as opposed to trying to win, which is what I
Right.
consider a great conversation.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, all of the tactics and the mindsets that I would coach people on and encourage them to adopt, there's an implicit assumption. I probably don't say it often enough that you are being, it's cliche, but you are being authentic. You're being transparent. You're being true. You're being true. You're not so,
Yeah.
I've been working a lot lately on helping people with their personal brand. And I've been thinking about it and writing about it because I've witnessed so many transformations, so many epiphanies when
Mm.
people are working with me on developing their personal brand. I'm starting to realize it's like this real superpower. And some people equate personal branding with self promotion or something that's not very
You icky, right.
authentic. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that is not what we're talking about here at all.
Yes, people do that, but that's not what I mean.
Yeah. 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 Well, the same thing with marketing in general, right? I mean, some people hear
Yeah.
marketing and they go, ugh. And other people hear marketing and they're like, it's just raising awareness. There's nothing, it's benign.
Yeah. Storytelling.
Exactly.
Well, Andrea, I warned us as much as we could probably talk forever. The 20 minutes has
I
flown
just
by.
got started.
Yeah. Well, there's something to be said for this. Doesn't have to be our first. I mean, no, this is our first. Doesn't have to be our only podcast conversation. We'll start another show called Talk About Talk About Talk. All right. I'll just wrap up by saying thanks for taking the time. It was a pleasure to, we've talked a few times, but not like just us getting a chance to talk. So it was a pleasure to get a chance to talk to you without other people around about, he says, but it's a podcast, dummy, about something that we're both like really passionately curious about. So that was super cool. Thanks.
Thank you so much. It was great to get to know you better. And I do hope we can do it again, Craig.